ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Nicole Hori.
And I'm your co-host, Maria Kashem.
In our show this time, we'll cover the Drivers of Employee Engagement program, presented by Hawaii Business Magazine at the Plaza Club.
It involved a very Akamai panel at a time when employee engagement means so much to our local workforce and businesses.
The program began just after 7 a.m. on Wednesday, August 7th. Considering the hour, a remarkably large and animated audience showed up.
Hawaii Business called the program Drivers of Employee Engagement as part of its C-Suite Best Places to Work series. But the program was really intended as a short course on how to handle human resource issues in local companies.
And it was a very valuable program for that, dedicated to providing those special kernels of knowledge and wisdom you need to have to hire, motivate, and retain an effective workforce. These lessons are invaluable to any company.
The program began with a keynote by Paul Burke, president of the Best Companies Group, who spoke about what it takes to engage your employees and how valuable engaged employees can be to the company.
We're going to talk a little bit about engagement. What does it mean? We try to define it. I think it's one of those things, I think people know what it is, but it's kind of hard to put words around it sometimes. I think it's how emotionally connected one feels to their employer. And there's a couple of key words in there. That's a very nice sentence, but I like to focus on two things, emotional and connected. You can be connected and unemotional. You can be very emotional and unconnected. But you combine those two where you have that emotional sort of gut connection to your employer that is that engagement. And I think people want to know, well, what is it? You know, and we look at the different types of questions in our surveys. We look at the types of information we're getting. And we sort of look at these things, this list of sort of definers of what is employee engagement. I think for a lot of people, it's a job that provides a sense of meaning and purpose. Now, any one of these we could spend, an hour talking about. But we've got about 30 to 45 minutes, so I'm going to move pretty quickly. But they're pretty important things. Having a meaning and purpose is becoming more and more important for today's employees. Most days, people are looking forward to going to work. It seems pretty simple, but there are a lot of people who have no interest in going to work. It's when's Friday coming? When's the weekend coming? When's my next vacation? If you're looking forward to going to work, that's a very good thing, which says a lot about how you feel about your employer. Discretionary effort. We've heard about this one a lot. Willingness to give extra effort on the company's behalf. That is huge. Are you walking away at 5 o'clock and your phone's ringing? Type of a thing. With an engaged employee, no. They're doing everything they possibly can, spending that discretionary effort to help the company succeed. Continuation of your career with an organization. That's huge. Now you're talking about, yep, I plan to stay here. Now, 2 years for someone my age sounds like, that's a long time. That there's an era that said, there was a time when the number of jobs that you actually had over the course of your career or number of companies that you were with over the course of your career was like 3. Now that's your first 5 years out of college, and that's considered, wow, you were committed. It's pretty scary how short that time frame has come. But when we talk about 2 years of seeing into the future for a lot of the employees, that's a long time, and that again is that connectedness. Willing to recommend employment to a friend. Yeah, you can like where you work, but are you really seriously going to stick your neck out and say this is a great place to work to a friend? Knowing sort of like, well, I like it here, but boy, that may be a little bit risky because now you're talking about their livelihood and their career. And it says a lot as well. So we measure those things. Willing to recommend a company's products and services to a friend. Again, brand pride. That's huge. When you talk about feeling really excited to wear the T-shirt or the hat or whatever it is that has the name of the company on it, and you're wearing it around town, and you're like, yep, that's where I work. You're proud of your brand, and you will recommend those products and services to a friend. Now, when we look at overall engagement, and here's just a couple of little tidbits in terms of some numbers that we're going to throw out there. According to Blessing White, and this number went up, believe it or not, in the last year, the national average for employee engagement is 41%. That means that on average, around the United States, 41% of the employees are considered engaged or that emotional connection. Or you look at any one of those list of things, plan to continue their career. We'll give that discretionary effort, 41%. That was in the 30s like 2 years ago. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how good the best places to work in Hawaii how those workplaces do? 93%. That's huge. The companies that are on these lists that are achieving best place to work status, 93% of their employees are considered connected to their employer. So that's a little bit about what is it? How are we defining employee engagement? You look at some of those things and think about them, and that's sort of how collectively we're looking at that emotional connection.
Our old friend Steve Petranek, editor of Hawaii Business Magazine, moderated the program. He's a newspaperman, a fair witness, and a great moderator.
Yes, I'm the editor of Hawaii Business Magazine. If you haven't seen our August issue, stare down in front of you. There it is on the table. Great stories in there. Our top 250 list, which is the list of the biggest companies in the state, and also great articles. There's a really good one. If you thought that the two banks that face each other across Bishop Street, the two biggest in town, Bank of Hawaii and First Hawaiian Bank, were the same kind of bank, you're wrong. I thought that for a while, but it's a great explanation of how different they really are.
Steve Petranek then moderated a panel consisting of Judy Bishop of Bishop & Company, Malcolm Inamine, Director of Human Resources for Aloha Pacific Federal Credit Union, and Marcia Hackinson, Organizational Development Consultant for Pro Service. Their knowledge and experience on the subject of human resources made them ready to answer any question that was put to them.
There is an overall shortage of skilled workers. I know it's hard to believe because all we've been hearing for years is unemployment's really high, but of course you know it's not that high in Hawaii, so we're fortunate. However, there's another side to that coin, which is a shortage of skilled workers. And part of that problem is due to the fact that the workforce is changing. We've heard it for years, computers are going to eliminate jobs. Well, it's here, it's with us. And the years of the recession made a lot of companies become leaner organizations. So they've cut back on some jobs and created new jobs that require new skill sets. So there's a shortage of those skills. And secondly, the great gap in the United States of STEM workers, science, technology, engineering, and math, is huge because the skilled worker, the talent worker, the knowledge worker is becoming more in demand, and they now represent 30% of our workforce. You may think, oh, that doesn't apply to my company, but it is and it will continue to do so. We moved from rural to manufacturing, now we're a knowledge workforce. So it's incredibly important. And guess what? The recession is over, the baby boomers finally get to retire. So a lot of your historic industry, organizational knowledge is leaving. And you can't always train that readily with a training program. So this is a huge gap and a huge problem. And so you're going to move back to the way it was in 2007 and 2008, where we were fighting for talent, which means you have to reinvent your organization to appeal to that talent.
If you want to change your culture into a great place to work, first, what are the first steps to take? What role does the HR leader in the company play, and how soon can you expect to see results?
If you want change, obviously, I think, like you said, just doing a survey will bump you up 1 or 2% in terms of, your employee engagement. And I think just making the first step into organizational development or a strategy session. If you don't have a vision that's stated that employees can repeat, you're not doing the first step. I think vision, having your mission, and then also stated values, whether you're going to put them up on a poster, put them on the back of your business card. Employees need to know what your values are. And I think that needs to be in the hiring. You need to hire for those values. As Peter said, you also need to use that as a performance evaluation tool, promote based on those values, and also recognize employees because of those values. So if you have those three elements, I think that's the first step into starting your organization. And you may have already had that. You may be concerned with perpetuating that. And I think that it's just about making that commitment from the top, as Peter mentioned, but also drizzling it down to all the employees and making sure the employees understand what it is you're trying to accomplish.
You've got this great plan, and the managers are engaged. How do you get employees to accept the new culture? And then what happens when someone or a number of people are resistant to that new culture?
These days, with the generation and their mentality, you have to really kind of facilitate the transition and education rather than tell them. I guess the employees these days, they don't want to be mommied or daddied, and they want to think they can figure it out themselves. Especially with Google and Bing, everyone thinks they know it all. Even my 9-year-old thinks he knows more than Dad because he can Google it. But with employees, it's to basically create an atmosphere where they're able to, or you put together teams that can make recommendations. So at Aloha Pacific, one of the things that we did do was put an employee group together, and we gave them we had the best, places to work survey. We had them look at the bottom 10 issues and come up with recommendations and suggestions to then present to the executive team. So, it gave them a whole career path as far as giving presentations in front of the executives, teaching them how to research, going out to survey the rest of their employees. And that grassroots movement really helps because they get better buy-in because it's coming from the employees. They think they're part of the solution. When you ever have leadership just dictating it down to everyone, it comes like, kind of like force feeding, where we're gonna make you do this, we want you to make a donation, and do this, don't do that. They want to feel like they are part of the ownership and solution, in helping make the company a better place.
How does that company communicate it to the outside world, to potential recruits, maybe even some people who aren't actively seeking work, but that this company wants? How do they get the message out?
Well, I think that a lot of people think of it as PR, if you get the right image, if your ads say the right thing, if your social media says the right thing about you, if you get good Yelp reviews and all those kinds of things. But, I know companies, I'm a recruiter. I hear people that call me and say, I want to quit because I hate this job and I hate this company, right? So, and I know sometimes those places are people and companies with great spin and great PR. So, you really have to walk the talk because, especially in a small town and industry-wide, people know each other. And so the word gets out if you truly are what you say you are. So I think the first way to communicate the kind of culture you have is to really live the kind of culture that you supposedly say that you have.
And one of the things that we do at ProService, at least with our employees, is ask them the question sort of every 6 months. Would you recommend ProService as a place of employment to your friends if they were qualified for the job? And so we've tracked that sort of every 6 months to make sure that our employees are giving us feedback on that number one question. And then we pose a question, what else do you want to know about? It's very open-ended, and then we take that information and do something with it, try to create some quality action teams to sort of implement changes. But, Judy's right, as a number one is employee referrals. If you have to go to the outside world, that means that you don't know anyone or your employees don't know anyone who's qualified or would be a likely candidate. So definitely employee referrals, number one.
Malcolm, you've got this great employee. It's one of those people that are highly sought after. Everybody in town wants this person.
Yeah.
So specific rewards and conditions that you use to keep that person. Now, clearly we heard from Peter's presentation that some of those rewards are practical, yet some others are emotional. And we also talked about before, and you had a response to me, and I won't give that away, about can we have two sets of cultures, one for those highly sought after employees and the other for those employees that might be easier to get in the marketplace?
Having two cultures might, open yourself to some legal exposure, but, you want to basically be consistent and have alignment. We talked about company culture earlier, and basically a lot of companies do great with it's on the wall, employees know about it, but where's the accountability? So some of the key drivers for that would be to have, the company values inside of the evaluation process for your leaders. Do they live, teach, and coach that on a daily basis? Do you have 360-degree evaluations that go up, sideways, as well as down? So look at the kind of, again, measurements that you do have in place in order to give you the information that you can use to help you to move forward. These days with the workforce, especially with two possibly separate cultures and the generational workforce, you do have some customization, but it can be subtle. It doesn't have to be, blatant. But you got to find a culture that you brand your company to a culture that everyone can fit into. And like Judy was saying earlier, hire to the culture of the organization. If they don't match your company values and your culture, then are they the right fit? Probably not. But compensation-wise, or just as far as recruitment-wise, having these days more executives and professionals want to be able to have an influence or make, at least have, or feel their opinion is valued and matters.
Judy, I want to ask you about something that Peter also touched on, but didn't go into very much detail. Men and women value different things in the workplace. Different generations, whether we're talking about millennials or all the way to baby boomers. How do you navigate those differences, whether it's in recruiting and so on? People are looking for different things.
You know, there's been a lot of talk about the generational workforce. This is the first time we've had like 5 generations in the workforce. And I think that that's, you know, certainly very critical, but I think there are many other differences in the workforce, and I think they've always been there. And I try to simplify things because their life is pretty complicated already. So the way I look at it is they're generational differences, but they are also intellectual differences. There's people who have, you know, advanced degrees, perhaps they're in technology or medicine or whatever in your workforce. And then you have the people that are actually perhaps, you know, the janitor in your workforce or cleaning, especially in a healthcare organization. There's a great diversity in healthcare organizations. And then there's the individual differences and their cultural differences and their own background, you know, especially when you have more of an immigrant workforce, right? And there's all kinds of diversity. There's male and women diversity. There's everything diversity. So I think you really have to think about the culture you want to create, recruit to that culture, and then, as Peter said, you've got to start to learn what the drivers are of individuals. And it sounds very complicated. How can you create the reward and incentive and motivational environment for every individual person? But you'll find there's a lot of similarity, right? So then I think you can do it when you're doing the surveying, et cetera. But one of the things that I think is really important is in a book I read recently called The Rise of the Creative Class by Richard Florida, and he talks about the rise of this class of people, which is partially the STEM people, science, technology, engineering, and math, but it also extends to education, arts, architecture, music, entertainment. Over 30% of our workforce is now in that class. And it's growing, as I talked about the knowledge-based workforce. And those people look at their careers very differently. They look at their careers horizontally. And the vertical organization is disappearing because the boss no longer knows the job of everyone underneath him or her. Now you need that technical expert in various fields to come and be on a team and help you. So you have knowledge clusters that have to work together to achieve the aims of the organization. And so people start to look at their career not vertically anymore, they look at it horizontally. How can I move from this knowledge cluster to this knowledge cluster, which helps me to grow in my career, right? And then they will move not only within our organization, but they'll move across companies to get that knowledge. And they're valued across companies and across within the organization, right? So people want them. So people have new motivations. So you have to think about that new and rising creative class when you create an organization. You have to create an organization that enables that to happen. And you have to get ready for the person who changes jobs every 2 years and not look at them the way we used to look at them, which Peter mentioned as well. So I think there are a lot of motivations in people today. And we have a very new workforce.
We later caught up with Steve Petranek to get his comments and reactions to the program. He was understandably pleased with how it went.
I thought the panelists were great. I learned so much about useful things to do to get those employees engaged, and of course how important it is to make sure employees are engaged. And it reinforced what I already know. The most important thing any manager can do is make sure that they get their employees doing 100% of what's possible.
Hawaii Business puts on these breakfast programs several times a year, and they are all excellent and useful to the business community. ThinkTech is pleased to be working with Hawaii Business on these and other programs.
The program made it clear that Hawaii businesses are in general good to work for, and that Hawaii workers are in general engaged and loyal. This is definitely one of the good things about Hawaii. Now all we need are more companies, more highly trained employees, and of course, more jobs. And now, let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
Check out ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. Drive Time radio series on KGU 760 AM for Energy on Wednesday, Asia on Thursday, and Tech on Friday. We also stream video and audio for all our shows live on the internet at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. every weekday, and we replay them all night long on Ustream.tv in what we call our Midnight Playlist.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. You can always catch something interesting there. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech.
On Thursday, August 22nd, HBCA and ThinkTech will present a luncheon panel program at the Plaza Club entitled, Don't Be Afraid to Send Your Kid or CEO to China. Stories of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the People's Republic.
The August 22nd program will be moderated by Larry Foster, who has practiced law in Shanghai, with a panel comprised of Derek Brow, a tennis star who has earned a master's degree in China, Brenda Foster, who was the longtime president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, Russell Liu, a Honolulu lawyer who has been practicing law in Beijing for more than a decade, Shackley Raffetto, a retired Maui circuit judge who has been teaching litigation in China, and Nikki Shishido, who has been working in China for DBED, the State Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
All these speakers have amazing stories to tell about their experiences in China. Come down and find out how it is to live, work, learn, and play in China these days. See if you should send your kid or CEO there. Anyway, you can sign up for these programs on hbca.org.
And now, here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
The last Friday of every month in Kaka'ako is Eat the Street, that big open area there. And Pony Askew comes and brings all her trucks, and people come from all over. They have a wonderful time. I've been there. We made an OC-16 movie of our trip there. It was very nice. It was a lovely evening. But now there are problems.
Well, you know, that's the lot that KS is going to build their big high-rise with Stanford Carr. So it's not going to be there forever. But while it is, you know, it's fantastic. I mean, 40 food trucks. I was there, the last one, and it was jammed. You could barely walk through it. There were so many people, and they're having a great time, and the kids are having fun, and the music, and the lion dancing. I mean, it's a wonderful sort of happening that only happens once a month. But it's my understanding now that the Kaka'ako Ala Neighborhood Board is starting to put pressure on them. They're complaining about the usual things, you know. Oh, there's a lot of noise. Oh, there's a lot of traffic. And that really saddens me. I mean, here's somebody who's doing a social enterprise, who's creating a space for food entrepreneurs to get their businesses started, to get exposure to the community. You know, when Kaka'ako evolves, there's going to be a lot of restaurant space available. I mean, how can we live, work, and play in Kaka'ako and not have places to go to eat? And, you know, as this food truck revolution evolves, these are entrepreneurs who start out in a food truck because it's inexpensive and build up their reserves.
Yeah, we've seen that already.
Exactly. And so I think this is an extremely good thing. Pony Askew deserves a tremendous amount of credit. Like I said, this is really not just a typical entrepreneurial venture. This is a socially responsible, community-based enterprise operation that's helping a lot of entrepreneurs. So I'm very supportive, and I hope our neighbors that go there and enjoy all that food will actually turn out at the neighborhood board and express how great this is for our neighborhood.
It's culturally sensitive, and it advances the culture. It respects the culture. It's a great thing to have in any neighborhood. It reminds me of my time as a student in New York. They had these kinds of festivals in the street. Everyone loved them. They brought the neighborhood alive. So the neighborhood board is misguided on this. To stop this project would be to kill the neighborhood, and so we have to have this vitality. It's the best possible thing.
Yeah, it's a great point. There's everything from Japanese food, Thai, Filipino, Korean, and crossover food like Korean tacos, and it's really creative, it's really terrific. So.
Well, one thing is that we touched on this, and that is as the neighborhood gets built up with all these projects, they really have to fold this into the ecosystem too. They have to be sure that there'll be room for this kind of thing to continue to happen in one way or the other. I mean, you can say that, well, all these food trucks have to go somewhere else, but they should preserve a place in Kaka'ako for them. It won't be the same somewhere else. This is where they belong. And we have to make sure that this phenomenon continues.
I agree. And it's really part of Hawaiian culture. I remember when I first came here 25 years ago, there's a little red truck parked at Koala Basin, the best food truck in town. And now look where we are. There are hundreds of them, and it's a great phenomenon.
It's a special piece of Hawaii.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope it continues. We'll do what we can, Bill.
All right, that's a deal.
And you and the neighborhood board, cut that out.
Cut that out, yeah.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, is helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
Okay, Maria, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like J. Fidel does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
Totally, Nicole. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com, be a sponsor or a volunteer, and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch the show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.